Okay, I'm first going to demonstrate how to do number 1 on 6.6 day 2. The very first thing you want to do is draw in your sinusoidal axis. It's not labeled, but you definitely want to draw it in. And then you want to figure out where that sinusoidal axis is. So that's your C value. So I know C is going to be the average of the maximum 15 and the minimum -7. So I'm going to add 15 and -7 together and then divide that by 2. So that is 15 plus -7 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I can see that this is at 4. Now to figure out A is just going to be the difference between 15 and 4, which is 11. Notice it's also the difference of 4 and -7, 11. So we know A is 11 and C is 4. Now to figure out B, that has a lot more steps. The first thing you want to do is draw in all your critical points between your two labeled values. I have 3 labeled and 10.5 labeled. It looks like 3 is a maximum. And then we have our SA, that's why we draw in our SA first. And then we have a minimum, and then at 10.5, it's an SA going up. On your x-axis, put slashes for those critical points that are not labeled. Now what I'm going to do is figure out my distance between critical points. What I need to do is subtract 10.5 minus 3, and then divide that by the number of intervals. You can see that there are 1, 2, 3 intervals. So 10.5 minus 7 is 7.5. 7.5 divided by 3 is 2.5. So I know my DBCP is 2.5. So to figure out the period, I can take my DBCP 2.5 and multiply it by 4. So that ends up being 10. And then B equals, this is radians, equals 2 pi divided by the period. So B is pi over 5. Now I'm going to start writing my equations. So for both of them, I'm going to start it off with y equals. The C value comes first, 4. Leave a space, then write your A value. This one is sine. This one is cosine. And then you write your B value, pi over 5, open parentheses, x, pi over 5, open parentheses, x. Now for sine, we are looking for an SA. I'm going to use the one that was given. This 10.5 is an SA going up. Since it's an SA going up, I know it's going to be a positive sign. And then I'm going to subtract this 10.5 because that's my D value for that particular one. I could have also figured out using my DBCP of 2.5, and I could have added 2.5 to 3. That is 5.5. And then add 2.5 again to 5.5, and you get 8. So I could have also used this 5.5. It's an SA going down, but then I'd have to have a negative sign, and I write minus 5.5 here. Either answer is fine. Alternatively, you could have subtracted 2.5 from 3 and gone backwards and got this critical point. This is an SA going up, and that equals 1.5. I'm sorry, that equals 0.5. Now for cosine. Cosine, you're looking for a maximum or a minimum. I have this maximum of 3 or this minimum of 8. I'm going to use the maximum of 3 because it was given, but you can use the minimum also. I'm going to write minus 3, and since it was a maximum, that's a positive cosine. If you would have used the 8, you would have written minus 8 here, but then it would be a negative cosine. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do number 2. Number 2, you also want to draw on your SA, your horizontal axis, but notice it's already labeled. So the middle of the graph is 0.3. So I already know that C is 0.3. We are given the maximum of 2. We aren't given the minimum. If you want to figure it out, you could, but you don't really need it. To figure out A, you just go 2 minus 0.3. So A is 1.7. Now what I'm going to do is label all the critical points between the two givens. We have negative 11 pi over 12, which is a minimum, and 34 pi over 12, which is a maximum. And I'm going to label all the critical values in between those. So we have this minimum, this SA, this maximum, this SA, this minimum, this SA, and this maximum. And for the ones that are not labeled, you want to put a slash on the x-axis. So now what I'm going to do is figure out my DBCP. I need to subtract 34 pi over 12 minus a negative 11 pi over 12, and then divide that difference by the number of intervals. So notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 intervals. So 34 pi over 12 minus negative 11 pi over 12, that ends up being plus, and 34 plus 11 is 45 pi over 12 divided by 6. 45 pi over 12 is being divided by 6, so that's the same thing as multiplying it by 1/6. Now I'm going to reduce this. 45 and 6 can both be reduced by 3. 45 divided by 3 is 15. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then I can reduce again. I see the 12 and the 15 can be divided by 3 again. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So we end up with 5 pi over 8 as the DBCP. Now to figure out the period, I need to take my DBCP of 5 pi over 8 and multiply it by 4. So that's going to simplify to 5 pi over 2 because 4 goes into 8 2 times. And now I can figure out my B value. My B value is going to equal 2 pi divided by the period, which is the same thing as 2 pi times the reciprocal of the period. The pi's cancel, and we end up with 4/5. So B is 4/5. So now I'm going to write my equations. Y equals the C value is 0.3. I'm going to leave a space. Then we have the A value. This first one's sine, and then it's 4/5, and then it's radians, so it's x. Now for cosine, same thing. 0.3, leave a space. 1.7 cosine, 4/5 x. I'm going to use for sine an SA value. Now, what I was given was a minimum and a maximum, so I do not have an SA value. I'm going to go and find this one right here by adding my DBCP. My DBCP is 5 pi over 8. So I'm going to take negative 11 pi over 12 and add 5 pi over 8. Well, I need to get a common denominator. It's 24. And so negative 11 pi over 12 becomes, I need to multiply it by 2, negative 22 pi over 24. 5 pi over 8, I need to multiply the top and bottom by 3, becomes 15 pi over 24. Adding those two together, we get negative 7 pi over 24. And so now I have my SA going up is negative 7 pi over 24. Since it's a negative, this is going to end up being plus 7 pi over 24. But because it's an SA going up, it's going to be a positive sign.